Dave, I really want to thank you. That was an amazing talk, and I think I'll extend that further in my talk. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Catlin Powers. I'm the co-founder and chief operating officer of One Earth Designs. And the background of our company is that about 7 years ago now, we started out working in a little tiny tent up above 5,000 meters in the Himalayas. Yes, so we should talk afterwards, Alan. And we spent a number of years working with many different villagers all across the Himalayan region of Western China, designing a number of different clean cooking technologies, of which solar cookers were one. Now, I'm going through things very quickly. This is a brief introduction so we can get to the meat of this talk, which is on the global public image of solar cooking. But if any of you want to speak in more depth later, we certainly can. Furthering this introduction, this is our flagship product, SolSource. It harnesses solar energy at 90% efficiency, actually a bit higher than that. And we're very proud of its operation after the work that we've done in the Himalayas. This technology is designed to go through sandstorms with minimal scratching. It reaches 550 degrees Fahrenheit within a few minutes, which is faster than most of the charcoal grills out there. So we always get a positive comment about that. You can see that there's a V cut out in the back here. This is a very simple design change so that people don't have UV, concentrated UV, going into their eyes while they're cooking. So just some simple changes that we've made that have really made a significant difference to cooks who are using this type of technology. So this is the basis here. Now, in our work in the Himalayas, we've heard a lot of different feedback that are negative comments about the perception of solar cookers. And that's something that we've wanted to confront head on in our work. I want to see a raise of hands of everybody who has heard negative perceptions about solar cookers in their work. How many of us? That's a lot of us. And you know, I want to say that that's something really wonderful, because it's that negative feedback that allows us to become excellent at the work that we do. So let's take it in that light and do something with it. Now, this next photograph is one that Julie actually forwarded me, which I think was taken by the UNHCR in one of their refugee camps. And these are a bunch of SK-14s that have just been dumped out in the back. Now, I think we're all familiar with the constraints that the UNHCR is working under. There are a couple of different ones. The number one thing that they try to address is dollars per person reached, so their impact on paper. Now, what that typically means is that they look for things that are small, things that are very, very cheap, anything that will increase that impact. And with that mentality, it means that they're thinking in a way that puts the paper impact above what the people in the refugee camps are really looking for. And that's a dangerous situation. I think we've seen it not only with the UNHCR, but with a lot of the funding agencies that we work with, that what they're looking for in terms of their funders is at odds with what the users are looking for. And so that's something that I don't know how to crack. I don't know how to solve that situation. Our approach has been to try to go around those organizations in order to directly work with users, but I'd love to hear any ideas that people have of how we can better work with these organizations and resolve that kind of conflict, which is at the core here. So that's institutional situation. Now, the next one here is what happens in the developed markets. What we're seeing in terms of negative perceptions here, where we're also selling product, is that people say, what, you're selling a solar cooker? Does that even work? And there's a real challenge there because a lot of people don't have access to seeing these types of products. And the reason that they don't have access to seeing it is because it's not in places like Home Depot. It's not out there in the mainstream channels that people can get access to. And one of the reasons that it's not is because right now we're producing at a price level that makes it really hard for us to go through sales channels that require 60% profit margins, like Home Depot does, right? So this is, in my mind, primarily a two-pronged challenge. One is the education, of course, getting people to understand this technology and how it works. The second one is a pricing challenge. How do we manufacture in a way that is going to allow us to hit those pricing brackets in order to work with those big companies? And I think that's a supplier optimization issue. Now, emerging markets. I actually meant to take this photo out, but since it's here, I'll talk about it. The very first solar cooker that I saw in China was actually being used as the roof of a doghouse because it had been broken. Now, that's not the majority of situation. The solar cookers that have been produced in mass in China are on whole very good, but they're not good enough. There's a lot of work to be done there. Now, the way that we started, it's actually motivated by the challenges that we saw in the solar cooker space. I was out there migrating with a nomadic family, and I was trying to build stoves out of the local materials, so improved cook stoves. We were designing it out of Adobe, building better combustion chambers, adding on chimneys, and we were running into all sorts of challenges. So I finally brought together all of the women in the community and a bunch of the village elders and said, why isn't this working? And one of the village elders said, well, there's one big reason, and that's that people need to be proud of the technologies that they have in their home in order for technologies to spread. And nobody's proud of these stoves that look just like their old stoves, except they have a chimney. So I said, well, what would achieve that? And he said, you know, a few years ago, I had a solar cooker. The government gave it to me. My wife walked down to the road, 18 kilometers, and picked this up, found out that it was a 95-kilogram slab of concrete with mirrors pasted on top. And she carried that back to their home. She has scars from this. They got it back, she set it up. It was saving them tons of fuel. They loved it. And then 3 months later, it broke. The concrete actually fractured. This is the picture of it. And so this experience, one, seeded the idea in their minds of how powerful solar energy could be, but also really disappointed them. So they said to me, if we could have some technology that used the sun, but was powerful and portable and durable and safe for us to use, then this type of technology would really be helpful and would provide this sense of pride and modernity. And so we said, let's do it. And we worked together with many different families, designing a bunch of different prototypes. Families were designing and then sharing with their neighbors, and people were learning from each other in that way. And eventually we created a commission that brought all of this information together and sped up the prototyping process. And that's how we eventually came to designing SolSource. And once we got it out there to families, we saw something really remarkable, which was that men were rushing back from herding in order to stand out next to their soul sources and show it off to their friends when they came back. And women were going down to collect water and trading all of the latest recipes with their friends. So the water collection process actually became one of the best education channels for all of the women sharing. So this was something wonderful for us. Now, I know I'm short on time. I wanted to go through, I think we're all pretty aware of what the challenges are on the product side. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the challenges on the adoption side that we've seen out there. Now, one that we talk about a lot is the challenge of this type of technology being an outdoor technology. Now, there are two barriers that we've seen in that space. One of them is that people don't want other people to see what they're cooking, because they don't want the food to either be not as good or better than their neighbors. Right? Both of those situations would be embarrassing. So in those situations, oftentimes setting up just a small courtyard or barrier space around it has made the difference that it requires. Another barrier in the outdoor space is people don't want to stand out under the sun, and especially in Asia, turn dark. So we've erected small umbrella systems. And our technology, because it has the V there, has made that a bit easier, but that's made a big difference. People, not so much in the villages, but on the funding side, have said, well, there's no heating attached. And certainly we would love to get to the stage where we can offer heating. In the meantime, what we've seen is that the majority of the fuel is actually being used for boiling water in most of the communities that we're in. Sometimes boiling water for animals because it gets so cold in the wintertime. But it's only a small percentage that's actually being used for heating, because most of the heating is fuel smoldering and it doesn't burn through the fuel very quickly. Another issue is energy stacking. Again, this is a question from funders. Well, what we've seen is that regardless of using solar, if solar cookers weren't there, people are using wood and dung and coal and whatever other fuels and stoves they have available to them at the times of year for the types of applications that make most sense. So it's a portfolio of energy products, just like in your kitchens with the stove and the oven and the microwave and the electric kettle. And this is exactly the type of scenario that solar cookers are fitting into. And we need to take that type of mentality as we're building out our business models. Responsiveness is a big one. I know I'm running short on time. One final one, fear to fail is huge. Now, imagine that you are in a situation where you don't have a lot of food to waste, and you're given a new stove that's completely different from anything you've used before. You don't want to ruin that food and have that reputation. So we need to lower that barrier. The best way that we found, at least, to do it is to go out there and work with the first few women in every village so that they become very confident cooking on these types of technologies, and then can teach the other women in their village. So that's been a very powerful tool. I do have more to say. I know I'm out of time, so if anybody would like to speak with me afterwards, please do come up. Thank you.